Brother Tanweer had actually reached out to me and he's asked, what is a good topic that you feel could be discussed? I was like, well, alhamdulillah, Islam is beautiful. There are a number of topics that can be discussed, and there are no limitations on things that we can discuss. I'm more interested in figuring out and finding out what is it in the community that you feel hasn't been touched on enough. And there are a number of topics that can be repeated, and marriage is one that we all either enjoy every day or struggle with every day, I guess, depending on the situation that we're in. And so I decided to touch on the issue of marriage in and of itself. What are some of the goals of marriage? Because this is something that's extremely important, and sometimes we forget the beauty of marriage in and of itself. And looking at some of the ayat and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually addresses marriage, and what it is, and what are the goals behind it, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about reconciliation when there is a miscommunication or there is some friction between the two spouses, and how to actually deal with that. The other issue, or the other thing that I hope, because Rami was here last time, so he had his laptop. My presentation is ready. Unfortunately, I don't have a laptop, so I can't set up the presentation for you. But afterward, I can email you the slides so that everybody can go and review them and go back to them. So marriage, linguistically, or how the Arabs used it, it comes from the word zawaja, which means to pair. And it's when you put two things together. When you pair two things together, this is how it's used in linguistic sense. But when it comes to Islamically, and the Shara, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the fuqaha have described marriage as an agreement between a man and a woman to start a family and to safely procreate according to the rules and regulation of our Sharia. And this is something that's very important to remember and to keep in mind when we deal with our spouses and when we look at toward our spouses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Another of His signs is that He created spouses from among yourselves for you to live with in tranquility. He ordained love and kindness between you. There truly are signs in this for those who reflect. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this beautiful ayah, He calls marriage a sign. He says it's from His ayat. He says it's from His signs. And if we look at the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His book, we find Him mentioning His great creations. We find Him mentioning the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the sky, and other creation such as the camel or the ant. And it is in line with all of these great creations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places marriage. So the question I would like to ask now, and open up the floor a little bit for discussion, is what is the purpose of a sign? Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore on these particular things? Why swear on the earth? Why swear on the sun? Why swear on the moon? And Allah, the Exalted, He can swear on whatever it is He wills, while we are limited to swearing on what? On Allah. We are limited to swearing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah, in His greatness, in His might, in His mercy, can swear on anything. So the question that we need to understand, if we want to put this ayah in context, because we said, وَمِنْ آيَاتِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this is from His signs. He calls marriage a sign. So all of these other signs that He swears on, what are their significance? Well, they don't have any. The sun doesn't have a major role in our life, or the moon, or the stars.
It's something we see every day, maybe?
Alright, something that we deal with and we see every day, maybe take for granted, right? Like our spouses. Yes?
It's like concrete, undisputed objects. If also Allah spreads on the earth, we can't deny the existence of the earth. So it gives further credibility to Jinn as well.
Okay, that's very good. So the brother mentioned that these things are things that are undeniable. Like everybody agrees on the existence of the sun, everybody agrees on the existence of the moon, everybody agrees on the existence of the stars. That's absolutely right. But my response to that would be like, okay, well there are many creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that we cannot deny. For example, if we go to a zoo and I say that's a lion, you're not going to have a group of people be like, no, there's nothing there. Right? So these things, while they are undeniable and undisputed and in their existence, that's definitely one aspect of it. I agree with that part. But there is something else there that we need to look at. There is a depth there that we need to understand. Let's go back and let's take maybe a little further step back. The word ayah. The word ayah is something that we are all familiar with, but we generally translate it as what? Verse. As a verse. We generally translate it as a verse. But we need to understand in Islam we have two types of ayat. What are they? Ayat al-kawniyya wa ayat al-shar'iyya. So ayat al-kawniyya are worldly, and ayat al-shar'iyya are shari', are Islamic. What are the difference between the two? Other than one being worldly and one being Islamic? Or is it too early to start asking questions? Ayah, this is our book. This is our book. This is our Quran. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking to us. And when He talks to us, it has to be important. And it has to be something that we have to ponder over and something we need to think about. And if we aren't pondering over the book of Allah, then there is an even bigger problem. And I'm not accusing anyone here, please don't misunderstand. But unfortunately, the way the book of Allah is presented in some circles, and not all, illa man rahimahullah, is that it is a book that is meant to simply take blessing from its letters. It's a book that's meant to be simply taking blessing from its reading. But I challenge that notion. Because while that is part of it, it is a book that is meant to guide us. It is a book of guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ أَقْفَالٌ. They said, do they not ponder the Quran, or are in their hearts locked? And this order is for all of the Muslims. This is not something specific to the scholars. When it comes to tafsir, yes, I'm completely with you and I completely understand. That the tafsir is supposed to only be done with those who have the linguistic aptitude, those who have studied the language, those who have some history, those who sat down and they understand usul al-tafsir, those who go through the ayat and they put them contextually and understand the historical significance behind them. That's definitely important, but that is just one aspect. Or if you have the fuqaha who know usul al-fiqh and they understand how is it when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He gives a command, what does He mean by that command? Does He mean something that has to be obligated on the ummah? Is it something that is recommended? Or is it something that is something that is not necessarily encouraged? It might even be in a way that is putting it in a context to show that it's permissible. And that's something for the fuqaha. But tadabbur, pondering over His book, is something that we all need to do. There's no doubt about that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't limit that to anyone. And the amazing thing about pondering over His book is that it is appropriate for everyone. Because somebody who has a high intellect, somebody who is very intelligent, somebody who might be advanced in their Islamic studies, his level of pondering is going to be very different from a person who has a base level or a base knowledge or even a base intellect. But the beauty with both of these individuals is that they can both ponder. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed and made it an obligation on everyone to ponder over His book. Because if we do not allow this book into our lives, if we do not allow this book into our hearts, we're realistically not allowing Allah into our hearts. So now we'll go back to our initial question about an ayah. An ayah is a sign. An ayah, it actually means a sign. We translate it to mean a verse because we're usually talking about the Quran. But these signs are of two types. You have worldly signs, and you have shari signs. What is the significance of either, and both of them are there to prove something. And if we call something a sign, it is a proof for something. And what is that proof for? And a worldly sign goes back to what you said. It's something that nobody can deny. But a shari sign is something that some people will deny. I'm dropping a lot of hands. A sign is something to prove, in a worldly sense, the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very simple. A shari sign is to show not the existence of Allah, because we established that with the worldly sign, but to show the proof and the correctness of Islam. And these are the two things that will lead an individual to Iman. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He addresses many of the creation. Because this book is all for all of mankind. This book is for all of mankind. And some of the ayat, and some of the verses, and some of the signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about are the worldly signs. When He talks about the trees, and He talks about the sky, and He talks about the moon and the sun, all of these things, that Bedouin Arab, he wants him to look around. and look at all of these things, and look at this mountain and this camel, and he wants him to ask himself, hey, where did these things come from? Is it possible that these came from nothing? And that Bedouin Arab, and even today, this applies to us too. We can look around and we'll say, it's not possible that this came from nothing. Wallahi ya Ikhwan, I'm sure many of you have gone for walks, I'm sure many of you have gone out, even after Salat al-Fajr on your way home, and you catch yourself just looking around. You catch yourself looking at the sky, you catch yourself sometimes even looking at a tree or at a flower, and you say, well, that's not possible that this came from nothing. It's not possible that this was some random occurrence. And it truly increases our yaqeen and our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He truly does exist and He did create this. And it's not possible that He would create this and just leave us and just walk away. And that's where the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes in. Because now that we believe in Him, it's very important we understand how to believe in Him. It's very important we understand how to worship Him. It's very important that we understand Him, Azza wa Jal, because we cannot understand Him except from what He tells us about Himself. So these things are very important when we go back and we talk about ayat. And that's what it has to do with these ayat, these signs that Allah is talking about. He swears on these signs because they're from His greatest creation. Not just because they're creation in and of themselves. These are His greatest creations for all of us to benefit from. The benefits from the sun, all of us can name. I'm sure we can all name 10 benefits, other than the heat and the light and all of the benefit that we take from it, and the crops, and the moon and the light that it provides, and the beauty that it shows in the sky. Or even the sky in and of itself. How it protects us from cosmic rays, how it protects us from radiation, how it protects us from all these things. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it a canopy, and the only canopy, the only ceiling in existence that has no pillars to support it. These are all signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's from those signs that He mentions marriage. And this is something that we really need to think about. Because this is the first human relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established. The first human relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established was marriage. And these signs, like we said, they're meant to strengthen our belief and cause us and force us to reflect on who our Lord is, Azza wa Jal. So, where does marriage fit into all this? How do we deal with marriage? What do we look at? What are some of the signs that we're supposed to take away? If this is a lesson for us, if marriage is meant to be a worldly sign that we take away and something that we benefit from, what are some of the things that we need to look at when we deal with it? So, marriage is something that should, by looking at all the other verses and looking at all of the other signs, something that increases our taqwa. And the taqwa is the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our day-to-day actions. It's commonly translated as fear, but taqwa is more God consciousness. In how I deal with people, how I pray, how I walk, how I sit in my car, when I talk to my spouse, when I talk to my children, when I talk to my friends, when I do a business transaction. If I remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every single one of those situations, this is taqwa. And being muttaqi, being a person who reaches this level of taqwa, is something that is possible for any single Muslim. Any Muslim that fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any Muslim that is aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his day-to-day actions, can become muttaqi, can become a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah azza wa jal to make us from His awliya. Ameen. Marriage is also a responsible way of fulfilling our sexual desires. And this is something, and the primary driving force, especially for men, on the reason to get married. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is nothing to be ashamed of. If an individual has this drive, and he has this urge, then he needs an outlet for that. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us such that we get angry, we have these desires, we get happy, we get sad, and He's allowed us outlets for all of these things. But these outlets need to be taken out in a responsible way. And marriage is one of those responsible ways of dealing with the shahwa and dealing with this desire. This is also a way to provide stable families for our children. There was a study that was done, I think within the past 10 years, talking about what is the formula for success of a child, and what is something that you can do so that your child has a step above everyone else in the world. Meaning, not necessarily that he will become a millionaire, but that he will have a stable family, and he himself will go on to be and have a stable family and have stable children, etc. So one of the things that they mentioned was having a father in his life. And I was very surprised. You know, they said the formula was basically a 3-part formula. One of them was like graduating high school, the other one was having a father in his life, and the second one, like having some kind of stable support network. I forgot what the third one was. But this struck out to me. That studies show that a person with a father in his life is more likely to succeed than one who doesn't. And this also goes to show about some of the subcultures here in the United States. There are certain subcultures, and not all of them, that promote this idea of single motherhood. They promote this idea of a mother being brave and going out there and fighting the world and challenging the world and raising the child by herself. While those children, the ones who are raised in a single mother household, are disproportionately higher prone to commit crimes, are more prone to fall into substance abuse, are more prone to get involved in some type of criminal activity. This is the effect, and this is the role of a father in a child's life.